Shashi Dele, and a very good morning to all. I would like to extend my sincere regards and would like to welcome all of you today at the conference with our third series of Theravada and Mahayana, uh, emphasizing on the four immeasurables and eightfold noble paths. Now, before I proceed, I would like to request everyone to kindly keep your mobile phone on silent mode so that we do not have any interruption. Right, thank you very much, everyone. Now, please allow me to introduce myself. I'm Kunga Chindan, Program Coordinator of Tibet House, New Delhi, and I'll be moderating this inaugural session. On behalf of Tibet House, Cultural Center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, I would like to extend our warm welcome to our respected chief guest, Mrs. Rinchen Lamole, who is a Buddhist member of the National Commission for Minorities, Government of India. Our keynote speaker from Theravada perspective, thank you, ma'am. Our keynote speaker from Theravada perspective, Venerable Dr. Dhammapiya Ji, Secretary General of International Buddhist Confederation, IBC. And our keynote speaker from Mahayana perspective, Venerable Geshe Doje Damdula, Director of Tibet House Cultural Center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, New Delhi, and Professor Mahesh Deokaji, Head of the Department of Buddhist Studies and Pali, Savitribai Phule, Pune University. And our respected chairpersons, esteemed speakers, and my dear participants who are gathered here for this auspicious conference. Thank you very much, everyone. Now, I would like to request Mrs. Rinchen Lamole, our chief guest for today's conference, Venerable Dr. Dhammapiya Ji, and Venerable Geshe Doje Damdula, Professor Mahesh Deokaji, to kindly light the lamp of wisdom. Please. Thank you very much, everyone. May I request everyone to kindly take their respective seats? Thank you. Now I request Venerable Geshe Doje Damdula, Director of Tibet House, New Delhi, to kindly present the souvenir and the white scarf to our respected chief guest and our keynote speaker. Mrs. Rinchen Lamole. Venerable Venerable Dr. Dhammapiya Ji, Professor Mahesh Devkoji. Thank you very much, Kishila. Now to begin with, I would like to give a brief introduction about Tibet House, Cultural Center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, New Delhi. It was established in 1965 by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama of Tibet for the purpose of preserving the cultural heritage of Tibet at the time when it faced the extinction in its homeland, as well as for providing a center for Tibetan culture and Buddhist studies. His Holiness' recurring emphasis on developing a sense of universal harmony and compassion as its own effective antidote to global suffering, together with the needs for a meaningful exchange between different religious and cultural tradition, also had a profound effect on the purpose and its activities of Tibet House. Over a period of 5 decades since its inception, Tibet House is recognized as a significant institution for the dissemination of Tibetan culture and for Buddhist studies. Now, Tibet House also has a museum and library of valuable Tibetan arts and artifacts as well. Every year, a publication unit from Tibet House publishes around 10 to 15 books, and a program division which regularly organizes lectures, seminars, conferences, film screenings, and exhibitions. Now, Tibet House also offers 4 different courses on Buddhist philosophy, psychology, and Tibetan language. As you can see on the screen, we have the 4 different courses: Nalanda Master's Course, Nalanda Diploma Course, Nalanda Certificate Course, and we have the Tibetan language course as well. Now, I would like to give you a brief introduction how it started. Firstly, the first batch of Nalanda Master's Course, which was launched on 9th December 2016 on the occasion of 51st anniversary of Tibet House, in the gracious presence of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, along with Sri Kiran Rijiju Ji, the former Union State Minister of Home Affairs, and Sri Najib Jung, Lieutenant Governor of Delhi. The first batch of Nalanda Master's Course, batch 1, is completed with 372 students from 44 different countries. And second batch of Nalanda Master's Course, which has already started in July, in which around 900 participants were enrolled from 54 different countries. Recently, on 2nd June 2023, close to 500 students who have recently graduated from are currently studying in the Nalanda Master's Course and the Nalanda Diploma Course offered by Tibet House, New Delhi, received a gracious audience and blessing from His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, an oral recitation, a transmission of J. Rinpoche's In Praise of Dependent Arising. At present, there are more than 4,000 students from 98 countries enrolled in courses run by under the leadership of Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdula, Director of Tibet House, Cultural Center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, New Delhi. And secondly, the Nalanda Diploma Course, which was launched on 2018. Till now, we have successfully completed with 3 batches, and the 4th batch of the Nalanda Diploma Course is being offered. And for the Tibetan language course, which is both online and offline, till date, we have 24 batches which have been successfully completed, and the 25th batch has already started in the month of June. Now, moving back towards our today's main theme, I would like to emphasize on what His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama and other Buddhist leaders put in sustained efforts to bring the 2 traditions together in order to learn from each other. It is a great joy to see the fruit of those efforts fructifying today. more dialogues between the two traditions are happening in both the Theravada world as well as in the Mahayana world, to further refine the bridge between the two traditions, as well as fostering the joint contribution of both traditions to furthering the knowledge of humanity on a higher academic plane in order to build a more humane world. Tibet House has been organizing these series of conferences on Theravada and Mahayana, and today we have the third series of Theravada and Mahayana. Now, I would like to request Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdula, Director of Tibet House, New Delhi, to kindly address the gathering and share his profound wisdom from the perspective of Mahayana. Now, before that, I would like to briefly introduce our Venerable Geshe-la. Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdula is currently the Director of Tibet House, New Delhi, the cultural center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. While being assigned with the responsibility of the directorship of Tibet House, he also facilitated to host several prominent international Buddhist conferences and Mahasanghas across the world. He also gives regular lectures and leads philosophy classes in Tibet House and other places as well. He travels widely within India and abroad to teach Buddhist philosophy, psychology, logic, and practice. He has also worked on several books. As assigned by the Office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he visited US in 2008 to work with Professor Paul Ekman on the book series Art of Happiness, which were jointly written by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, such as The Graded Path. He has written a number of papers for national and international conferences on topics such as the paradox of the brain and mind, and ultimate reality according to Arya Nagarjuna. He is currently in the process of writing two important books, one entitled Journey into the Paradox of Brain and Mind, and the other, What Constitutes the Ultimate Reality, the Effects of Understanding the Ultimate Reality. Now, may I request Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdula to kindly address the session.
Respected venerables and respected Arinchal Hamale, the Buddhist section, Minority Commission, the Government of India, and Venerable Dr. Dhammapiyaji. Secretary General of the International Buddhist Confederation under the Indian government. And also we have Professor Mahesh Deogarji, the head of the Department Buddhist Studies in Pune University. And also that I can see many of my long-term friends like Professor Bahulgarji, a great Sanskritist, and also Dr. Alokji there, and many of the participants and Dr. Doji there. And one person that I'd like to introduce to all of you here is Mr. Chimbala. Raise your hand. Yes, Mr. Chimbala. And he is the founding director of Tibetan Buddhist Center, Singapore. And also that is the liaison officer or the coordinator for the Office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama around the Southeast Asia. And he has been extremely dynamic in organizing many programs, particularly to look for the bridges between Theravada or the Pali tradition and a Sanskrit Buddhist tradition. So now we see that the earlier, about like 10, 12 years ago, when I attended conferences, I used to be one of the youngest members of the speakers. Now I see there's time for us to retire. There are many young ones coming up who are very dynamic, and we can see a great hope and the youngsters to take the responsibility. Number one, to bridge between the two traditions, Buddhism in Pali language and those prevalent in Sanskrit language. And also that the bridge, the various the member citizens of the world, believers, non-believers, Easterners, Westerners, in other words, to create the plurality and to create the inclusivity in the world rather than exclusivity, which is a major crisis in the world today, where unnecessary conflicts, fights, these things happen. And in the meanwhile, say there's the economic downturn because of that. And just imagine that world of inclusivity, where all this unnecessary waste of the world resources, financial resources, can be otherwise dedicated for the welfare of the humanity. So this is something which we expect from this group, this conference, that people, the young ones, I can see that most of you, I don't know whether it's the same, the age group when I was 10 years ago, or that I'm growing older and I see everybody so young. So the point is that the young ones, they're taking the responsibility, and the young ones should learn the spirit of inclusivity rather than exclusivity. And keeping in mind that exclusivity, this is son of the animal instinct. And inclusivity is a son of the civilization development. If you are to really look at the institutions, communities, countries, and so forth, where there's inclusivity involved, there's a harmony there, there's growth there. And GDP growth, everything will happen with the principle of the inclusivity. With the exclusivity principle, then everything will go downturn, and the whole world will be unhappy, whole country will be unhappy, whole community will be unhappy, even the family will be unhappy. So this is what we need to keep in mind. Finally, if you really want to grow as a civilization, we have to think of inclusivity. So with this in mind, given that for all programs like this, for example, say there are some schools, institutions who request me to help organize the bigger programs, conferences, festivals, and so forth. And the conveners, there was always one issue, that the last minute withdrawal happens everywhere. And because of which, here I'm not supposed to be the keynote speaker for the Mahayana tradition, but then no choice. When once somebody came to my office, and then they said that I said, how did you come to know about Tibet House? And the person said that Lama Subarambucha sent me here, and he gives such a regard to you. And I said that Lama Subarambucha has no choice. In Delhi, there's only one person. Whether you like it or not, this is the only person, right? So therefore, given that many people, they withdrew the last minute for their own engagements, responsibilities. We understand it. And this is what happens to all the programs, or those on a very high level international conferences to the national level conferences. These things happen, we understand it. And as such, that the last minute, the responsibility came to me, and because there's so much tension on the heads of the young, the Tibet House, and the staff. So they asked Geshe-la, where can we get the next keynote speaker for the Mahayana tradition? I said, don't worry, I'm always there as a substitute. Okay, so this is how it came into being. And meanwhile, I feel this, the group, not as a very, for me, not to be too formal, because most of you are known to me as my very close friends. And the point is that we need to really know the core, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I'd also like to share with you His Holiness's take and His Holiness's sort of approach for the world. Of course, on an international level, today what is known as C-learning, social, emotional, ethical learning, and also the universal ethics, which is the main umbrella of the C-learning. These are happening on a large scale, on the international level, happening everywhere. There's a reverberation of this, the program, spreading everywhere, and the fruition of this. Let's pray that the fruition happens soon. The youngsters coming with the products, the results in the form of inclusivity, and where all these unnecessary conflicts, wars, and the disagreements, armaments, they will all dissolve very soon when His Holiness's vision and the mission come to the fruition in the minds of the youngsters. So, having said this, we see that today, in the modern world, on the one hand, people talk about modern science, and on the other hand, there's the reality of the ancient wisdom or the spirituality. And this ancient wisdom, oftentimes, some brilliant, really brilliant people like Albert Einstein, for them, ancient wisdom is a great wisdom. And he knows that finally the world should operate on the basis of the ancient wisdom of compassion and understanding of interdependency. This is what Albert Einstein acknowledged so well in one of the addresses, where for him the universal compassion is the answer to all our problems. So where there is the division between the self and others, invariably, a mental prison is created within you, the optical delusion is created within you, where the solution, he says, lies in the expanding of the circle of compassion from otherwise to a very narrow scope of the people, the inner circle of yours, to the most expansive, the humanity. If this happens, this is what we call as the universal compassion. So, this universal compassion, we can't really force anybody. And this is what His Holiness envisioned, put them into the practice, implementation in the form of what is known as universal ethics, or today implemented in the form of C-learning, social, emotional, ethical learning. So where it is not by force, but by, the bringing about cognitive transformation in the individuals, from where otherwise we see things as so demarcated between self and others, that affinity to self and aversion towards others, this invariably is created. Whereas with this division of His Holiness implemented on the larger scale in the education curriculum and so forth, we see that the demarcation between self and others will be dissolved, and we can see the diversity as a beauty of the humanity rather than the evil force of the humanity. Otherwise, as of now, where there's greater plurality, there's a more conflicts happening. Whereas, like a beautiful garden, if a garden is made of only one flower, it's not a garden. Whereas if a beautiful garden is a garden which necessarily should have innumerable varieties of the flowers. So, greater the plurality, to the greater the extent of the plurality, there should be the greater beauty of the humanity. So this happens only if we see the one binding force, which is universal compassion, which His Holiness always envisions. So from this, what I can say is that Mahatma Gandhi is revered, is respected, revered as the father of the ahimsa, progenitor of ahimsa, non-violence. And today, we can very effectively say that His Holiness is the progenitor of compassion. This is so important to make a distinction between ahimsa and compassion. So, we have two great giants there. We have two great progenitors there, Mahatma Gandhi and His Holiness, as gifts for the world, the legacies for the world. Mahatma Gandhi, the espousing ahimsa. No matter what struggle one has to go through, one has to resort to ahimsa. For His Holiness is compassion. So this is one thing that we need to keep in mind. So with this in mind, we see that 2,500 years ago, to the topic, Four Immeasurables and the Eightfold Noble Paths. So why we adopted this topic is that, in the first place, since 1960s, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, in his 20s, he initiated dialogue between Buddhism in Pali tradition and the Sanskrit tradition. And as a very young young man. His Holiness is very young, at the age of 20. Who are we at 20? We are just lost in the university, perhaps going to the nightclubs and the pubs and so forth. His Holiness taking the whole initiative, bridging the two worlds of Buddhism. So this is what His Holiness did, initiated, and then over the years, this endeavor continued, and of course, when it comes to His Holiness, it is on a large scale, it is on a very high level, and alongside why I introduced Mr. Jimbala here for all of us, to all of us here, is for the reason that he is putting all his efforts to bring about the harmony, to look for the bridges between the two traditions. So in this, the effort of he and his team, several of such programs were initiated between the Buddhism and Pali tradition and Buddhism and Sanskrit tradition. And now, again, he and his team are organizing the same thing in December, where His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, is going to be invited as the chief guest and as the greatest inspiration for all of us. And also that he initiated many other programs like dialogue between the Islam or Muslims and Buddhism. And because that he is representing His Holiness' office in Southeast Asia, so he brought scholars, practitioners from Malaysia, Malaysian Muslims, and the Buddhist traditions from the different traditions, from the Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Cambodia, Chinese, Tibetan Buddhism, Korean, and so forth. So this is all his amazing efforts, and what we are doing here, this is in line with the visions of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And I remember having had several discussions, very informal discussions with Venerable Dr. Dhammapiyaji about the commonalities between the Theravada Buddhism and the Mahayana Buddhism. And at one point, I remember I gave him just a booklet, and he just flipped through this, and he came across the Heart Sutra. So where it started, thus have I heard. The Buddha was dwelling in Rajgir. So Dr. Dhammapiyaji, Venerable Dr. Dhammapiyaji, said that this is the same thing. What do you find in Pali? What do you find in Sanskrit? Is exactly there in Pali also. So this is a commonality. So this is what is known as one family with the plurality of, the approaches. So this is the basic spirit of this. And let us keep in mind that all these great teachers, like Buddha Shakyamuni and so forth, and they appeared on this earth not to start an ism. Let's not forget it. They did not come on this planet Earth to start an ism. Okay, now I came on earth, I'm quite popular, so I start an ism. No, this is not the approach. Because they saw the world is on fire. World is in problem. In those days, 2,500 years ago, wars happening among the different kingdoms, and so much of, the injustices that you see even in the palace where he was residing. So much of injustices that he saw, wars, conflicts, even in the family, the gender discrimination, all these injustices he saw in the world, and so therefore he left the palace to look for a solution. To save the world, to save the humanity, not to start an ism. Let's not forget it. With this in mind, what did he find? What did he find as a solution to address these problems? So, the Four Immeasurables and the Eightfold Noble Paths. So these are the aspects, these are the parts of the incredibly great wisdoms the Buddha Shakyamuni discovered. He did not invent these wisdoms. He discovered discovered these wisdoms. So keep in mind that everybody shares two things in common as their ultimate aspiration. Whether they could articulate or not is a different story. But everyone, including human beings, whether rich, poor, educated, uneducated, male, female, it doesn't matter. Even as animals, everyone aspires for two things. One, when the threat is there, the person shrinks. The person runs away from threats, the fears. When you're happy, you want to have as many, as expansive happiness as possible. These are the two realities. So with this in mind, say, if you ask, what degree of the fear you want to get away from? What degree of happiness do you like to have? If these questions are put forth to anyone, believe it or not, whether you believe it or not, it doesn't matter. Whether scientists believe in science, non-science, it doesn't matter. Everybody seeks, for example, with COVID-19, except for some people who are a little suspicious over a conspiracy, whatever. The reality is that everybody seeks to stay away from COVID-19, particularly during the Delta wave, spread of the Delta wave, which means that this is a common feature. And it's not that the Buddhists run away from COVID-19 and the non-Buddhists have this according to your tradition, COVID-19. Then Christians run away and the Buddhists are so happy, this according to your tradition. No, whether you are believer, non-believer, Buddhist, non-Buddhist, male, female, it doesn't matter. High, low, educated, uneducated, everybody is scared of COVID-19. This is reality. So this reality is what the Buddha discovered. Likewise, Jesus Christ discovered. Like Ram discovered, Prophet Muhammad discovered, Lord Mahavir discovered, Zoroaster discovered, Baha'u'llah discovered. And all these great teachers, they discovered this reality and then they tried to help the humanity, save the humanity by addressing a solution, by giving a solution to us. So in this connection, for this conference, we have the experts invited from both sides to explain how to address these problems, mental problem, physical problems, and eventually, even these physical problems, they become problem when something is a problem inside your mind. How to fix this problem? So this is we see that the Buddha, in case of the Buddha, Buddha showed three aspects, three solutions. So first is that we want to stay away from threats, fears, and problems. For this, the Buddha ultimately identified that these threats, they're all finally pulled towards you with your cognitive error. So when the cognitive error is fixed, your problem is fixed. To make it very quick, say you dream, you have a nightmare, and there's so much of fear there. So this fear is all because of the cognitive error in believing the dream is real. The moment you wake up, your cognitive error is fixed and the fear dissolves. So one aspect the Buddha taught us how to get away from the fears of life is by fixing your cognitive error. So for this, the Four Immeasurables and the Eightfold Noble Paths, primarily the Eightfold Noble Paths, is a means to fix our cognitive error, number one. Then number two, not only that, okay, now I'm free from fear, I'm fear-free, free. But life is so boring. Some people, they are very rich, very educated, yet they feel that their life is so hollow and meaningless and very boring. Why? Do they feel any fear? No fear. They feel just boring. They feel the life so bored. So they want life to be so happy. So what is this? Where lies the problem? Again, whether you're happy or not happy, whether you have a sense of fulfillment or not, is again determined by your own thought process. So how to fix this problem? To protect you or to uncover your true nature inside, which has the nature of total fearlessness, technically referred to as nirvana, and the seeking infinite happiness, the technically referred to as the Buddhahood, full awakening. It's not about the Buddhahood, doesn't mean that you should be Buddhist. It's about the awakening of your potential. A small child, whatever gender, whatever background the child may be from. But if some smart people, they can see that this child is gifted. Even though the child does not have any financial support and so forth. So these really big thinkers, great thinkers, they will think of adopting this child. because this child has a great potential. Likewise, not only this child, each one of us is that child. We have this incredible potential within us, and this potential must be awakened. So awakening is known as Buddha in Sanskrit. Buddha doesn't mean Buddhism. So we should not be really confused. So Buddhism is a system which people followed after this great teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni. Okay. So the reality is that whether you follow Buddha or not, it doesn't matter. The only thing is that we need to identify this potential within us, this incredibly beautiful potential within us. And once identified that, our job is to awaken this potential. So by two things. Number one, to cognitively fix your mind and then effectively broaden your circle of compassion. So the four immeasurables is primarily to broaden your the sense of compassion towards all the beings so that your happiness expands. For example, the kind of responsibility that His Holiness the Dalai Lama faced, has been facing since the time he was like 16 years old when he took charge of the whole nation being under the threat of the invasion by big power. So despite all these threats today, if you were the person, if I were the one, or you are the one to take up that huge responsibility, by now we should be non-existent, we should have died. But His Holiness, not only that he survived, he thrived in the world, he became the most respected leader in the world today. So, what made him that? Because that's a tremendous joy there. No matter what situation that he encountered, there's an incredible joy within him. Where is this joy coming from? It's from inside. And how did he uncover this joy? Because of the practice of the four immeasurables. So we see that one is by cognitively fixing our erroneous mind, and the other one is expanding the effective mind, element of your mind, by cultivating the four immeasurables. And then these two must be supported by the stabilizing meditation. That is known as the single-pointed meditation or the shamatha meditation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Venerable Geshe-la. Now, let me take this opportunity to briefly introduce Mrs. Rinchen Lamolle, our chief guest for the conference. Mrs. Rinchen Lamolle studied in Central Institute of Buddhist Studies up to 10th standard and then completed her bachelor's degree from Jammu University. She has two daughters. In the year 2015, Srimati Rinchen Lamolle was nominated as a counselor of the 5th LEHDC lay and successfully completed her 5-year tenure. During the entire period, she dedicatedly performed her legitimate duties for the welfare of women in the society. Before nomination as a member of NCM, she has been working as a state president, BJP Mahila Morcha. In December 2021, she was nominated as a Buddhist member in National Commission for Minorities and has since then been tirelessly working for the welfare of minorities. Now may I request Mrs. Rinchen Lamolle to kindly address the gathering. Please, ma'am.
Gangi thuksing isung nastawa thamchat spangwe chir tampechus niston zatpe gotam tela chaksalo. आज के इस समारोह में उपस्थित गेशे दुर्जे डमडुल्ला, वेनरेबल डॉक्टर धम्मपिया जी, प्रोफेसर जी और सभाघर में उपस्थित महानुभावीगण, मैं सबके नाम नहीं ले पाऊंगी। आप सबके सम्मुख यहाँ पर आज अपने विचार व्यक्त करने का जो सौभाग्य प्राप्त हुआ, इसके लिए तिब्बत हाउस के गेशे दोरजे डमडुल्ला के नेतृत्व में जितने भी कर्मचारी हैं, उन सबको मैं तहे दिल से धन्यवाद देना चाहूँगी कि समय समय पर आप लोग बहुत सारे ऐसे कार्यक्रम आयोजित करते रहते हैं जिसके माध्यम से खासकर हम बौद्ध धर्म को मानने वाले समाज के, चाहे महायाना के हो या थेरावादा के हो, ऐसे बहुत ही अच्छे टॉपिक को सामने रखकर समाज के सामने लोगों की अज्ञानता को दूर करने की आप लोग चेष्टा करते रहते हैं। इसके लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद बोलना चाहूंगी। ऐसे विषय पर आप जैसे ज्ञानी लोगों के बीच में मैं खुद को बोलने लायक नहीं समझती हूँ, क्योंकि ऐसे विषय पे हम सिर्फ सुन सकते हैं, हम इसके बारे में कुछ एडवाइस नहीं कर सकते हैं। लेकिन फिर भी आर्य अष्टांगिक मार्ग जो है, इसी के माध्यम से भगवान बुद्ध ने हमारे जो जीवन जीने के एक आचरण है, हमें अपने सोच को कैसे रखना है, हमें अपने आचरण को कैसे रखना है, हमें अपने इंद्रियों पर कैसे काबू रखना है, ये चीजें सिर्फ संत महात्माओं के ही काम नहीं है। आप लोगों के आदेश अनुसार, आप लोगों के मार्गदर्शन के अनुसार हम जैसे जो आम जिंदगी बिताने वाले लोग हैं, आपके उपदेश सुनते सुनते आम लोगों के जीवन में भी कई बदलाव ला सकते हैं, कई बदलाव आते हैं, ये हम महसूस करते हैं जब जब हमें आप लोगों के उपदेश सुनने का अवसर मिलता है। परम पावन दलाई लामा जी सदैव हिमालयन रीजन, खासकर लद्दाख जैसे एरिया में अपने आशीर्वाद हमेशा बरसाते रहते हैं, और उनके शुभ वचनों को सुनकर भी हम ऐसे रास्तों पर चलने की अथक प्रयास करते हैं। तो इसके लिए हमें बहुत बड़े बड़े पोथी और ग्रंथों को, मेरे ख्याल में अगर हम उस रास्ते पर जिस तरीके से एक संत महात्मा चलते हैं, जिस तरीके से गेशेला चलते हैं, जिस तरीके से हमारे बंतेगण चलते हैं, लेकिन फिर भी हम लोग भी अपने प्रयास के बल पर अगर इनमें से 8 मार्ग में से हम एक एक करके भी, हम थोड़ा थोड़ा करके भी अगर हम आगे बढ़ पाएंगे, तो हम अपना ये जीवन हम सार्थक और सफल बना सकते हैं। इसके लिए हम कहते हैं, कई लोग कहते हैं कि मन साफ होना चाहिए, ऐसे पूजा करके क्या करना है, जब तक मन साफ नहीं होगा तो कोई फायदा नहीं है, ऐसे कहते हैं। लेकिन मैं समझती हूं मन साफ होने के लिए हमें इन विचारों को जानना जरूरी है। जब तक हम सुनेंगे नहीं, जब तक हम इन विचारों को जानेंगे नहीं, जब तक हम प्रयास नहीं करेंगे, तब तक हमारा मन भी साफ नहीं होगा ना। तो इसीलिए सबसे जरूरी है सुनना, बार बार सुनना, बार बार आप लोगों के वचनों को सुनना, बार बार हिज होलीनेस के वचनों को सुनना, बार बार रिम्पोचे गण के वचनों को सुनना, और हो सके तो आजकल हर चीज हमारे सामने उपलब्ध है। पहले जब तक हमें पाली भाषा नहीं आएंगे, जब तक हमें टिबेटन लैंग्वेज नहीं आएंगे, हम कैसे पढ़ेंगे, एक ऐसे दुविधा थे लोगों के सामने। लेकिन आज टेक्नोलॉजी इतना एडवांस हो चुके हैं कि हमारे सामने आप जिस लैंग्वेज में ही पढ़ो, जहां भी बैठ के आप पढ़ो, अपने मोबाइल फोन में आप कुछ भी आप सर्च करके आसान से आसान शब्दों में हम भगवान बुद्ध के वचनों को समझने के और अपने आचरण में उतारने के हम कोशिश कर सकते हैं। ये आज के 21वीं सदी की बहुत बड़ी देन है। हम समझते हैं कि समय बीतते बीतते तब के युग बहुत अच्छे थे जब यहाँ पर अच्छे लोग थे, अब तो बहुत खराब हो गए हैं। हम इसको एक नेगेटिविटी के हिसाब से हम देखते हैं, लेकिन आज के इस युग को हम अपने तरह से अगर हम पॉजिटिविटी के तरफ भी देखेंगे तो ये सारे चीजें कंग्यूर संग्यूर बुम से लेके जितने भी भगवान के वचन है सारे आज, चाहे आप हिंदी में पढ़ो, इंग्लिश में पढ़ो, जिस लैंग्वेज में भी आप पढ़ो, आप अध्ययन कर सकते हैं। ये आज के युग की देन है। तो इन चीजों के लिए भी हिज हॉलीनेस दलाई लामा जी के नेतृत्व में हर चीज आज हमारे गुरुगण, हमारे गेशेला लोग जो है इनका नवीनीकरण करते हुए समय समय पर इनको जो है डिजिटलाइज करते हैं और अनुवाद करते हैं। पहले हमें अनुवाद वाले पुस्तकें बहुत ही दुर्लभ होते थे, बहुत ही मुश्किल से मिलते थे। आजकल हर चीज का अनुवाद मिलता है, हर चीज हमारे सामने है, लेकिन अगर नहीं करेंगे तो सिर्फ हम अपने कमी को छुपाने के लिए हम कहते हैं कि मुझे तो वो भाषा नहीं आता है, मुझे तो वो समझ नहीं आता है। अगर जो भी ऐसे कहते हैं तो सिर्फ अपने कमी को छुपाने के लिए, एक्सक्यूज के लिए हम कहते हैं। अन्यथा हमारे लिए बाकी चीजों के लिए हमारे पास बहुत समय होता है। बाकी चीजों के लिए हम दिन रात मोबाइल से हम आजकल जुदा ही नहीं होते हैं। जिंदगी का एक अभिन्न अंग बन के हम चाहे अपने बिस्तर में भी लेके जाते हैं। आजकल बच्चों को हम देखते हैं, लेकिन आदत कीजिए इस टेक्नोलॉजी का हम सही तरीके से उपयोग करने के तरफ भी हम अपने बच्चों को ऐसा शिक्षा और ऐसा ज्ञान देने की जरूरत है, ऐसे समझ पैदा करने की जरूरत है, ताकि आने वाले पीढ़ी भी इन चीजों के तरफ ध्यान हम कर सके। तो फिर हम ऐसे संगोष्ठी और ऐसे प्रोग्राम्स रखने का हमें सही अर्थ हमें नजर आते हैं। तो इसीलिए मैं जरूरी समझती हूँ ऐसे बड़े जो संगोष्ठी है, बेशक यहाँ पर बहुत सारे स्कॉलर्स हैं, कभी हम स्टूडेंट्स कम्युनिटी को भी बुलाकर उनके सामने भी ऐसा विचार रखना चाहिए, ताकि आने वाले पीढ़ी अगर इन चीजों को जानेंगे तो हम अपने भविष्य को, कई पीढ़ी को हम इन चीजों को पास ऑन करने में हम सफल हो पाते हैं। तो ये मैं इस मंच से आप लोगों से अनुरोध करना चाहूंगी कि बेशक आप बहुत सारे स्कॉलर लोग एक साथ बैठ के तो बोलते हैं, स्कॉलर एक दूसरे के विचार आदान प्रदान करते हैं, लेकिन अगर स्टूडेंट्स कम्युनिटी के सामने हम ऐसे संगोष्ठी रखेंगे तो आप लोगों के विचार उनके लिए एक अनमोल चीज साबित हो सकते हैं, जिसका उनको बहुत ही मुश्किल से उनको मौका मिलता है, क्योंकि उनके ध्यान में ही नहीं आता है कि हमें अच्छा ऐसी चीजों को भी पढ़ना है। अगर हम उनके सामने एक दो बार बोलेंगे, उनका ध्यान आकर्षित कराने में हम अपने आप को सफल कराना पड़ेगा, तब जाके हम आने वाले पीढ़ी तक भगवान बुद्ध के शुभ वचनों को पहुंचाने में हम सफल हो पाएंगे। मैं इस विषय पर ज्यादा नहीं बोलूंगी। आप लोगों ने मुझे मौका दिया और यहाँ पर आने का और अपना विचार व्यक्त करने का मुझे अवसर दिया, इसके लिए मैं गेशेला का बहुत बहुत दिल की गहराइयों से आपको धन्यवाद बोलना चाहूंगी और इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ मैं अपने वाणी को यहाँ विराम देना चाहूंगी। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। जय हिंद।
Thank you very much, Srimati Rinchen Namule, for such an inspiring, promising, and a noble words to keep our motivations high, and especially to the younger generations like us. Thank you very much, Srimati Rinchen Namule. Now, may I now request our keynote speaker from Theravada Perspective, Venerable Dr. Dhammapiyaji, Secretary General, International Buddhist Confederation, to kindly address the gathering. And before that, I would like to give a brief introduction. Venerable Dr. Dhammapiya Ji is the Secretary General of the International Buddhist Confederation based out of New Delhi, India. The position has facilitated him to host several prominent international Buddhist conferences and Mahasanghas across the world. He is also the founder of Dhammapiya Foundation and the founder chairman for Bahujana Hitaya Education Trust in Manubanku, Tirupura. Under this trust, Venerable Dr. Dhammapiya Ji has established the Dhamma Deepa International Buddhist University in South Tirupura with support from the government of Tripura. Apart from these prestigious endeavors, he is a professor and the principal of the Michael Madhusudan Datta College, Tripura. He also takes pride in having established a charitable residential school, Dhamma Deepa Senior Secondary School, along with a monastic education institution, Dhamma Deepa International Buddhist Academy. Over 600 Buddhist monks and novices, along with young boys and girls, are taught Dhamma as well as formal mainstream education in this institution, where they are also trained in meditation. Now may I request Venerable Dr. Dhammapiya Ji to kindly address this session. Thank you.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa buddhang saranang gacchami dhammang saranang gacchami Sanghang saranang gacchami. A very good morning to venerable members of Mahasangha, the chief guest of today's inaugural session, Mrs. Rinchen Lamoji, Professor Mahesh Devakarji, and all my brothers, sisters, and friends in Dhamma. At the outset, I would like to thank my friend and scholar Geshe Durje Damdolji for inviting me to this kind of gathering and a discussion. We have been discussing together for a long time on the topic that we know only one historical Buddha called Sakyamuni Gautamadi Buddha. But we have today different traditions being practiced in different parts of the world. And we do not know much about each other practices unless we go and visit and try to know each other. We, the practitioners of Theravada, monks or nuns, or so-called Theravada, I would say, because Buddha has never coined the term Theravada, I'm sure. Buddha has never coined the term Mahayana, I'm sure. So the new term coined, what we call ourselves Theravadin, or followers of Theravada Buddhism, and the followers of Mahayana Buddhism or Vajrayana Buddhism, or what we say today, the practitioners of Nalanda traditions. So we have an understanding, sometimes which it's misleading or not correct. That's how we thought it would be appropriate to bring together the people from different traditions and discuss among ourselves the similarities and differences that we have. And we are very much thankful to His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama, for initiating the dialogue on Vinaya between the Theravada and Nalanda traditions. That has opened up really an understanding between these two traditions, that though we talk about ourselves as followers of Nalanda traditions or Theravada traditions, but essentially we share the same Vinaya. Little bit here and there, but essentially the same Vinaya. So it's the same with the Mahayana tradition. So like this, there are different concepts, different teachings of the Buddha found in Pali traditions and also in Sanskrit tradition. I'm not sure whether the language spoken by the Buddha to the people at that time was Pali or Sanskrit. Maybe you will be better to tell us. What I understand is the Buddha used to speak in a language understood or understandable to the people of the particular area. So whether it was Sanskrit or Pali or something else that we have to really delve into. But it is sure that Buddha had taught Dhamma alone. Whatever we call the Dhamma or Dharma, which is universal. The Dhamma taught by Buddha is not only for a particular group or caste or creed, but it was for all. He taught the Dhamma to all sections of people at the time. And we are also told that the Buddha taught Dharma or Dhamma not only to human beings, but to all living beings, whoever used to come to him. So the Dhamma taught by Buddha is universal, it is for all, and it is all pervading in the sense the universal law of nature is all pervading. You find it everywhere, not only in India. If Buddha has taught Dharma in India, people might think it is Indian Dharma, right? Not so. Dharma taught by Buddha is all pervading. You'll find the Dharma everywhere operating in the universe, in the world. And it is eternal. I would say eternal in the sense the mental Dharma, Dharma of the mind, that whenever, wherever we generate the defilements and negativities, what is the result and effect? We experience some sort of uneasiness, unpleasantness, misery, things like that. So this is the Dharma of the mind, whether it was in the past or now or even future. This Dharma of the mind will be there. So in that sense, it is eternal. And whenever, wherever we generate or develop the attitude or feeling of what we call today here the four immeasurables, the metta, or loving kindness, or compassion, a love, friendliness towards our fellow human beings, or towards even animals, all living beings, what is the resultant experience or effect? We feel good, pleasant, light, lively, energetic, right? So this feeling will continue, will remain. It was in the past, today also, and in the future also it will remain. So from that point of view, it is eternal. So here, actually I'm given the time from 10:45 to 11, 15 minutes. It's only 5 minutes left. So I'll sum up in 5 minutes. The term coined here, Theravada and Mahayana, the perspectives. The perspective is perspective, but truth is the truth. Dharma is universal, eternal, all-pervading. It is same. So we can discuss on the Dharma, Dhamma taught by the Buddha from different perspectives, as that is the fact today. We have Sanskrit tradition, we have Pali tradition, having little variance or differences or even similarities. I do not know when the term Theravada was coined, as it was not coined by the Buddha. Those who are the followers of Theravada Buddhism, they claim or try to assert that they are the followers of original teachings of the Buddha. The Thera means the elders. Right. It may be true or it may be something else. But that is a fact. And with the Theravada Buddhists feel the Mahayana Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism or the Vajrayana Buddhism, they are later development. Right. After 500 years, 700 years, 1000 years. So there are many new things added. So that is not original, for example. Right? So it may be true, maybe something else. But it is good to have discussion like this. See, when we talk about immeasurables, we have in Pali tradition two terms, asankhya, apamenya. Right? So here it said apamenya somewhere. These are the terms which can have very close translation to infinite, boundless, immeasurable, something like that. When we talk about these immeasurables, I think we are referring here to Brahma Viharas. 4 Brahma Viharas, the Metta, Karuna, Mudita and Upekha. These 4 Brahma Viharas or the 4 immeasurables are the state of mind of a person who has uprooted defilements and evolved and elevated one's mind to the highest level. This metta moitri, loving kindness, karuna, compassion, they have different categories, different degrees, we can say. I also have metta moitri. You also have metta and moitri. Everybody has. I think even animals they also have some degree of friendliness and love towards other living beings. I mean, their own fellow animals. So metta is there, but the degree differs. Those who have uprooted and purified the mind to the highest level, their power of metta or moitri, karuna, compassion, will be really great and stronger and boundless, immeasurable. Moitri or metta is such. It's like the rays of the light of the sun. When the sun rises, it doesn't have any specific direction to focus or give away its light. The sunlight is open to all, and from all directions we can receive it, but we have to be receptive. So also the moitri or metta of the Buddha, enlightened people, highly evolved people, is immeasurable. Light and power of metta or the compassion, karuna, can be emitted and spread. That will have pacifying, peacemaking, harmonious, environment creating kind of impact. But again, it will depend how much is the world receptive to this. So, the Four Noble Truths we are talking about here are the ways, the path by following which we can purify our mind, we can purify our views. It's very important. Purification of the mind is not enough, because we have to purify the views also. If we have wrong views, it will be difficult to purify the mind. So we have to purify the views, Ditti Visuddhi, then the Chitta Visuddhi, or the purification of the mind, can take place. Of course, there may be argument, but this is what I understand. Both are necessary. At the end, I'd like to say that each of these four immeasurables matter when I think, I speak, and I act for the welfare and benefit of all living beings, like the sun which gives out its light for all, then I am working, acting on the principle of metta, the first immeasurable. When my power of love and compassion is directed toward a particular group of people, needy, weaker section of people, or the suffering people, then I'm working or acting on the principle of karuna or compassion. And when my action is directed towards the people who are really joyful for achieving something great, and I also share the joy of that person or the people, then I'm acting on the principle of the third immeasurable, that is mudita. Right? And the fourth one is upekha. You all know. When things go wrong, when things are good, how do we maintain ourselves? If something goes wrong, and if we are so much depressed and down, then we are not following the fourth immeasurable. Or if something is so great, very good happening, and we are so much elated, and we do something wrong, that's also not following the fourth immeasurable. So the following or practicing fourth immeasurable, upekha, is under any kind of situation, whether good or bad in our life, we maintain equanimity, balance, trying to understand the nature of thing, that everything has the nature of passing away, will change. So just be equanimous. That's what the fourth immeasurable. This state of experience of mind can be achieved when we practice the Eightfold Noble Truth and Eightfold Noble Path. That's how I think the Theravada perspective of Four Immeasurables and Eightfold Noble Path. Thank you so much. I have taken more time.
Thank you very much, Venerable Dr. Dhammapiya Ji. Now I would like to request Professor Mahesh Ashok Devkar Ji, who is the professor and the head of Department of Pali Savitri by Pune University, to kindly come to the podium and share a few words. And before that, I would like to share a brief introduction. He has the 25 years of experience in teaching and has supervised 5 MPhil theses and 7 PhD theses. His field of specialization include comparative grammars of Pali and Sanskrit, Theravada Buddhism, contemporary Buddhism, translation and editing. He has published many works like Technical Terms and Technique of the Pali and Sanskrit Grammars, Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies, Sarnath, Varanasi, 2008. He is the recipient of several awards, such as Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar Jeevan Gaurav Award, Bahujana Bhusana Award, Pilu Kambata Award, Best Teacher Award, National Association for the Blinds, Nashik Unit, Samaja Bhusana Award, Kavya Mitra Sanstha Pune, Kalidasa Sanskrit Sadhana Puraskar, Government of Maharashtra, August 2021. I would like to request everyone to welcome Professor Mahesh Devkar Ji. Thank you.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. It's my great honor and privilege to be here among the great dignitaries on the dais, among the audience. So my sincere homage to the Triple Gem, the chief guest of today's function, Mrs. Rinchen Lamole, and the two keynote speakers, the director of Tibet House and our guide and Kalyana Mitra, Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdullah and Venerable Dhamma PIG, who is shouldering many responsibilities, and I'm really happy to be here among these great dignitaries. I just have 2 minutes and I'll finish off very quickly. Actually, this particular initiative, the series where we are having a dialogue between the Theravada and the Mahayana tradition, the dialogue is basically to bridge gaps if there are any, because sometimes the gaps are illusory. There is a beautiful share which I remember just now, so I just share it with you that फासला नजरों का धोखा भी तो हो सकता है. So the फासला नजरों का धोखा भी तो हो सकता है. So the distance could be just an illusion of your eyes. साथ मिले न मिले हाथ बढ़ा कर देखो. So you never know whether you will get a company or not, but at least try to stretch out the hand, right? So I think we need to stretch out hands and see whether we can go along, and I'm sure we can go along, because as Geshe-la has rightly said, this is a garden with many different flowers, and the common ground for all that is the Shakyamuni Buddha, right? So this garden is basically growing on that very solid ground, right, of the Shakyamuni. And so whatever teaching we have, I mean, the Shakyamuni has given us parameters. He says that whatever reduces your passion, hatred, and delusion, that's the Dhamma. Now, the only difference would be like from what viewpoint, what view you take and you proceed, right? So I think the difference is basically that of from where you start, from what is your viewpoint, what are your goals, so intentions and the goal and the purpose. There you could see some differences according to, as the Buddha Shakyamuni himself was for plurality and always said that he's teaching us for everyone, right? People of all inclinations, people are all of all dispositions, and so on. So there has to be plurality. I mean, Buddhism cannot work without plurality. So this is something which is we have to keep in mind. And therefore, Buddha, whenever he give discourses, he always said these are dharma pariyayas, right? So this is just a pariyaya, one of the many options, many ways which he has shown us. So I think our job is to explore these different ways and to see how they coincide, how they kind of complement. See, there are two approaches. One is to say that everything is same, there's no difference, right? I mean, we try to kind of, if there are any differences whatsoever, then just try to put them under the carpet, and whatever commonalities are there, we can work with it. So common minimum program, right? So that's what people work with these days. But I mean, what we are trying to do in Buddhism is to actually understand these differences and to learn how to complement, I mean, how to view them in a complementary manner, so that we acknowledge the differences, not ignoring them, but by acknowledging the differences, we are trying to make sense out of it, and that would be basically our task here. So I think we as followers of different traditions will have to, there's no need to say that they are same, but I think, in my opinion, we should acknowledge the difference and also the beauty which lies in that difference. Because the way the Theravadin with the realist viewpoint looks at the world, and the way a Yogacharan with a Chittamatra view looks at the world, I mean, there could be differences, but these are different ways of understanding the world, understanding the reality around us. And I think everything holds its own value. So as the Buddha said, I mean, idameva satcham mogamayam, that's what we call as view, wrong view, right? This alone is true, and the rest is false. But I think we Buddhists are of the opinion like idamapi satcham. This also can be true, and this so this is something which will make the world. I think I mean we can understand the world better, as Venerable Dhamma Piyaji was saying, that the truth is there, and we are just having different perspectives, right? Looking at the same truth. So we are viewing the same Himalaya from different sides. And I think what all of us are saying, and the very famous saying of this, the story of the elephant and blind men, everyone is in a way showing some aspect of truth, and we have to put them all together to understand the holistic picture. So I'm really thankful to Geshe-la and the Tibet House for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts few minutes before you. Before I stop here, I would like to present two of our next volume, because we are having at the Pune University, Savitribai Phule Pune University, this project of having a dictionary of Buddhist terms in Pali, Sanskrit, Tibetan, and Chinese, so comprising all 4 classical languages of Buddhism. And this is a dictionary focused on Buddhist terminology specifically. And you can see this as one of the attempts to you can say it's one of the attempts to understand different traditions, right? So now, as rightly our chief guest has said, now not knowing a language cannot be an excuse, right? So I think we are having this dictionary which will further reduce that excuse. So because now if you want to have some word in Pali, you can have a parallel in Tibetan or Sanskrit and Chinese. And I would like to present the next few 2 fascicles to Geshe-la, and would request Geshe-la to also release it in your presence. Yes, and I will also request the dignitaries, the chief guest for today's conference, and also Dhamma Piyaji. So there are these 2 fascicles, the fascicle number 5 and 6 with 100 entries each, including Pali, Sanskrit, Tibetan, and Chinese. I would like to turn this fantastic question around. And it's always an honor to be here with in Tibet House and to present this dictionaries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Mahesh Deokaji, for your promising words. Now, before I conclude today's inaugural session, on behalf of Tibet House, New Delhi, I would like to thank each and every one of you, and especially our chief guest, Mrs. Rinchen Lamole, for the event, and our keynote speaker, Venerable Dr. Dhamma Piyaji, Professor Mahesh Deokaji, and our director, Venerable Geshe Doji Damdullah, for gracing this occasion. Thank you very much, everyone. Now, may I request all of you learned ones to kindly stay for a quick group picture. Thank you very much. Now we are going to start with the first session in 5 minutes. So kindly be seated. And the theme for the first session is actually very interesting and exciting, I would say. It's the 4 immeasurables and the 8-fold noble paths in Pali and Sanskrit Buddhism, sutra and commentarial sources, study, reflection, and practice. And for that, my colleague, Ms. Tenzin Domala, will be moderating the first session. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for being such a wonderful audience.